Welcome to Inside the Firm. I'm your host, Alex Gore. I'm here with my co-host, Lance Cayko.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
So here at Inside the Firm, it's just a look inside of our architecture firm, what we're doing. It's basically principal talk, everything from residential design to some commercial work to our big thing is a development project that we're doing ourselves. So a lot of architects want to do that. We're kind of showing you step by step how we're going through that process.
Speaking of that development project, I am gearing up to take my Class B Contractor's license because I will be the contractor on the project, the face of it anyway, and be able to sign all the paperwork and, yell at subs and stuff like that. So doing that, excitingly enough, I've been reading through the 2015 IBC.
And let me tell people why.
Literally every word.
Yep. Because the contractor test is an open book test on the IBC and is a couple other books too.
Yeah, so if you take the Class B test, then you should have read through the IRC, International Residential Code. You should have read through the International Building Code book, and then you should have also read through the Standard Manual for Concrete. Yeah. So I think it's like ASIC or something. I'm butchering it.
So to jump in here, and you have to read through it because even though it's open book, you won't have enough time to look every single question up.
Well, here's the calculation, okay? So there are 80 test questions, and there's 270 minutes. That comes to 3.34 minutes per test question. So actually, it is possible if you're really fast, right?
But still, it's kind of worth it to read through.
Well, I think you should read through it anyway. Here's the other thing too is, so anybody could take this test. So whether you're an architect or a builder or you're just a person and you say like, I want to build my own house one day, or screw it, I'm quitting my office job and I want to become a real estate developer, because maybe we inspired you on this podcast, hopefully, to do that. You could actually take the test. In a lot of states, there's no qualifiers to take the test.
You literally don't have to be into industry, in the field.
Yep.
Because that's what...
So like City of Denver is a much different case. If I wanted to build a skyscraper there, I'd have to get a Class A license, and then I need all these qualifications. I have to have letters from architects, engineers, builders, like people saying like I am qualified to even take the test. But Class B is anything under 3 stories, any kind of building type. So you could build almost anything, right? And then Class C is like your typical if you're just going to do a house.
Yep.
Class A, skyscraper.
So here's the 2 things I find interesting about you studying is one,
how awesome I look studying.
Yeah, just everyone's doing work. I'm taking phone calls, managing 4 guys, and he's in a lounge chair, basically.
Legs crossed.
Yeah. So you asked me, there's so much information, and you're pretty far, and you've probably only asked me 3 or 4 questions, and it's because like I've done it. And
yeah.
Actually, a lot of it is...
And just kind of confirming, like, is this why you did this way?
Yep. And which is hilarious because I'm not a licensed architect. But
when are you going to get that license plate, by the way, that says unlicensed?
Ooh, that's pretty sick. Yeah. I think people should have that just anyway, because it's a license plate, unlicensed.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool because it does show like I do have like I know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Because again, I do this. But then the other thing that is cool is that you bring stuff up. Like, what was it? The 10-foot rule. If you have a fire-rated wall in the exterior,
yep.
If you have a 10 feet fire separation, and fire separation that means from a lot line, another building, a center, a road.
Yep.
You can have it if those are more than 10 feet away. It only has to be rated from the interior,
yep.
Which I'm like, brilliant,
yep.
So cool.
Which I really think helps with the framers because then they could frame it like in a typical fashion, and then they could still, they don't have to frame it where they do both sides of the walls at the same time. Yep. Type of thing, and erect it.
And my question to you then is, because it's so concrete, meaning literally the answers are right in there, reading through these 3 books and then taking that test, do you think this gave you more or less knowledge than all of your architecture studying for all those tests?
You should revisit that question once I get down. So far as far as fire ratings go, how about that? I'm on to Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is fire and smoke protection features. Everything you would need to know about, rating walls and all that stuff. I'm only a couple pages in, so it's already much more valuable, right? Yeah. I don't know. I think there should be a large component of that happening. Practice it just happens because it has to, but somewhere in the school. If somebody figured out how to make it a fun course, how about that? If somebody figured out how to keep it interesting, because how about this? Our architectural history teacher did a phenomenal job, I thought, about keeping people's attention. He was funny. he made history not boring. So somebody could figure that out with the codes, make the codes not boring.
Yep.
That'd be
Shout
awesome.
out Ron Ramsey. I almost think just this should replace one of the architectural tests. Meaning, okay, for this test, read the IBC, the IRC, and then come take the test, and that's it. You can still have your multiple tests.
And why can't that be open book too?
God, it would be great.
Because it would force people to read it. It would really force them to read it, because when I took my test, I didn't read through all of it. I only read through, I think, chapter 10, which is like life safety, and maybe chapter 5, which is
that's
the building
your
heights
area.
and areas. Yeah.
Yep. Occupation.
To know exactly. To know how big you can do a building with certain occupancy, stuff like that.
Anyways, I think it's really valuable because piecemeal throughout the years mean you have looked through a lot of it, but going straight through it is great. The only thing is, when would you recommend people to look at this? Because literally in college, in your first 2 years, a lot of it's going to go over your head. Because you'll be like, why do I care about it? How am I going to memorize 10 foot? In my head, it's already cemented. I will know that forever. Like these codes, once I learn a specific code, especially like the fire rating where we have a 2-story, we have a mezzanine that's a third that doesn't count. We only have 75 feet. We have under 3,000 square foot, which means we can use a stair. We don't need an elevator, and it doesn't need to be sprinkled.
Yeah.
Because it applies to the project, that's always going to be there. But if I would have read any of that nonsense 2 years ago, I wouldn't remember it. So
when do I think you should read it? I think you should read it. If it was me, I guess I can only speak about me. If I could turn back time and stuff, I would do it the first year I started like a real internship right after school. You think
that early you'll get what's going on in that book?
Oh, I see what you mean. Maybe not.
I think you need a year or two minimum.
You think do it after a year or two, huh?
Know what? I would say when you're close to done with your architecture hours. So 2 to 3 years, honestly.
That's probably a good time to read it.
2 to 3 years.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a pop quiz for you, okay?
Oh, awesome.
Because there's some terms that I've never heard before, and I want you to just guess what the heck they are, okay?
Okay.
And they're funny terms. So the first one is, and I'm sure many people listening will know what this is, proscenium wall.
Oh, I know what that is.
What is it?
It's from the Jurassic period. You use dinosaur bones as the structure for your wall. Is that correct?
You're so close. You're so close yet so far away. It is the wall that separates the stage from the auditorium in an assembly seating area. So like the wall of a theater where the curtain closes is a proscenium wall.
I feel like Ron Ramsey probably told us that.
I feel like he did too.
Yeah.
So I had to look it up.
Shout out, Ron.
This one was hilarious. There was actually some jokes made in the office yesterday that were probably not safe for work, but here we go.
Or the podcast?
Or the podcast.
You want me to make them? I'll make them.
Well, here we go. Your dad's listening.
Yeah.
Sallyport. I know.
Does it have to do with...
It has to do with entering and exiting a space or a building. Sallyport. Think Star Trek. Think. So entering the spaceship from space and then needing to get back in the spaceship.
Well, I was going to say a portal or something that transitions between either a liquid or a gas and then an intermediate space. And then like normal space.
You're kind of close. A security vestibule with 2 or more doors or gates where the intended purpose is to prevent continuous and unobstructed passage by allowing the release of only one door or gate at a time. So a really unsexy way of saying airlock.
Yeah. A Sallyport?
A Sallyport. Nobody knew. I didn't even know. It blew my mind.
Huh. I wonder if you guys...
I had to go to chapter 2 definitions.
Yeah. Cool. Why? Because you're reading it and they said, oh, make sure you have a Sallyport. And you're like, what is a Sallyport?
Yeah, it was something about where that's allowed. Because it was like getting people in and out of buildings. I can't remember what chapter it was, but
okay.
Anyway, there you go. There's your
good to
quiz.
know.
Now everybody knows. Everybody knows what Sallyport is.
Yeah.
So next time you go into, we don't even have vestibules down here in Colorado. I feel like because it's so warm. It's warmer. But in North Dakota, you had to do a vestibule.
But is every vestibule a Sallyport?
I don't think so. No, they're not. Here's why they're not. Because for a Sallyport, the way I understand it is
one has to be closed
exactly at all times.
Exactly. So you open it, you close it, then you can open the other one.
Exactly.
Rather than both doors on the vestibule could be open.
Yeah. So a Sallyport is a airlock vestibule. That's what I like.
Kind of like prison.
Kind
You
of
ever
like kind of like prison.
Been there a couple times. Not for me visiting other people.
Exactly.
That doesn't sound much better, but whatever.
Okay, the next little segment we have for everybody is a hearkening back to a horror story on a project. This is kind of a recent one. It's a house we did about 2 years ago. I think we finished designing. About a year ago, we finished designing it, somewhere around there. House in Boulder, and it ended up being a real crap show in the end with the project. And what happened was, and the reason why we're telling this story, why I'm telling this story, is because I kind of want to, I want to share with everybody about maybe identifying the signs of a client that will end up just not conforming through the whole project. And I don't mean conforming in the sense that they're just doing exactly what you want design-wise. I'm saying following the rules in the way we're supposed to submit for permit, not do construction without a permit, all that kind of stuff. Okay? So we got this project, I think it was 2 years ago, and then we finished doing all the drawings about a year ago. It's a pop-top small house in Boulder, and he's a repeat client. He was a good client at the beginning, wanted to do a really, really cool house, but in the end, where stuff started to fall off, and here's when I should have noticed the telltale signs. So one day we come in, and he comes in, and we're basically done with the drawings. He's here to pick up stamp drawings, and he's got some questions about what other stuff he's supposed to fill out for the project. And then towards the end of the meeting, he goes, well, I've kind of already started the demolition. And I go, really? And he's like, yeah. And I go, well, how far did you go with that? And then he shows me a picture, and then it looks like there's footings that are poured too. I'm like, oh, so a little farther than the demolition.
And you asked me, because this was a historic house, right?
Oh, well, that's the other part that came up. Yeah. So then so there's rules. And I said, here's a couple of rules. You can't destroy the front, and you have to at least keep 50% of the exterior. And then I think he demoed more than that. I said, you might be screwed. I don't know. So here's the thing too.
That's a Boulder rule.
I'm all about trying stuff, and if you get in trouble, asking for forgiveness later. Right? Within reason. Like, I'm not going to go, do something crazy, and then, some within reason. Right? So like at my house, I have chickens. Not technically supposed to have chickens. Ask for forgiveness later. It looks like we're going to get forgiven. We get to keep the chickens. Yep. So back to this guy. So I asked very politely, and I said, please don't do any more construction. I said, we've already got a target on our backs that, the building officials, the planners, everybody's going to be watching you a little bit more carefully, because, you really stepped over the line here. Okay, sure. So at that point, the footings were poured. So we finally submit for permit, and we get the first set of comments back, and then I address the comments, and I say, hey, you should come into the office, and we should go over these comments so kind of how to relay them to the planning department, because we weren't submitting for permit. It was the owner / builder, all that. So he comes back in, and he goes, well, and at the end of the meeting again, we go through everything. He goes, so when can I start ordering lumber? And I'm like, well, we don't even have a permit yet. It's Boulder. It's hard to get a permit anyway. Yeah. So just relax. And he goes, well, I already finished the foundation walls. I'm like, oh no.
And then
please stop.
Here's the other issue with that too, because I don't think the engineer knew. And
exactly.
The engineer needs to inspect the rebar. Everyone knows the whole process.
Yep. So at that point, even in hindsight, I still don't know what you should do at this point, other than, I guess what we ended up doing was, so then he goes back, submits again, and we get another round of comments. And the crappy thing is now, again, we have a target on our backs. Yeah, he's got a target on his back. So now the planners are coming back with even more comments every single time. Instead of less comments, we get even more comments. So we can tell, like, oh no, now they're punishing this guy for what he did.
But I bet you that's true, but that's not always the case, because I've just been hearing more and more horror stories about these
planners coming back with crazy comments. Fonts.
Not just that, but 10 comments and then 30 comments of stuff they've never even covered before. It seems crazy how, I don't know if they're not doing enough review. I don't know what's going on with these cities. It is exponentially crazier than when we started.
On a side note, we just had a house go through in Erie with no comments.
Love you, Erie.
But that's
Shout out
that's
Erie.
because it's all about me and Jackson, one of our best employees.
Yeah.
Just crushing it.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys are doing on your side.
Wheat Ridge, I got a house through. I got
Did you really?
couple houses.
Did you
through
really?
with
No
nothing.
comments?
Yep.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Shout out Wheat Ridge, Erie. We love
you guys are the best. You guys should put on seminars. So I feel like after this time, I've finally established stop doing it. But I just should have saw the signs, right? So city comes back one more time with comments, and this time the client says to me, "Hey, I looked at the most recent set of drawings and the steel I ordered doesn't match. What can we do?" And I go, "Why did you order steel? And he goes, "Oh, well, we're starting to frame." Oh, I'm like, oh, man. So it just will not stop. So finally,
I have to jump in there because I had a contractor who said, hey, I didn't account for something in my bids. Because I sent him preliminary plans just to look over. And he knew that they were preliminary. They weren't final. We weren't even done with all the engineering. So obviously, the caissons will change, whatever. We ended up having Bigfoots. And
we even put not for construction on the drawings we sent out that are not for construction.
Exactly. So I don't know how I handled it in the moment, but I don't know. Why did you give a final bid on not final drawings? Don't do that.
No bueno. So what I ended up doing was I wrote back to the planner and said, "Hey, you guys got to be aware that this guy will not stop building. You need to go out there and red flag it and shut it down and all of that." They ended up doing that. So the construction has completely ceased on the project, and since then it's gotten even worse and it got down to sort of a personal level where we just kind of rescinded ourselves as architecture record. We have nothing to do with the project and stuff like that. And I routinely drive by that house and there's nothing happening. So I don't know what's going on with the project. But I guess the point of my story with this is when exactly, how do you start? How can you pinpoint if somebody's going to do that again? And I don't think this is an often experience, but I think it might happen at least once or twice in somebody's career to be aware of that. So since you were an outside observer, Al, what do you think the cutoff point is, or saying no to the project, anything like that? I don't know how you vet that from the beginning.
It's very personal because you've seen the same situation on mine. Not the same situation, because I don't think any of my clients have built and done some of the unethical things that this person has done. And I remember you talking to me, kind of saying this and saying that, hey, you were going to cut off, you were done. I was like, yes, I totally agree. Do that we're done with that guy. 2 weeks later, you said okay, so I'm like, wait, what is going on? I thought that we were done with this client. And literally I felt like Lance, because you've said that to me a couple times with some of these clients.
Oh yeah.
But none of my clients have. So I wrote down some notes because my clients, their problem sometimes is a competency problem. They think that they know buildings when they know development.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where that issue comes from. This one, I don't know about his competency with building, but it's more of an ethical question.
It was literally just ethical.
So it was an ethical question. But the only insight I have on this conversation is that, man, it must be hard if you're a one-man person and you don't have maybe strong people that can talk to you. You know what I mean? Would any of our employees be like, Lance, what are you doing? You can't be working with a guy. No, they're not going to say that.
Right.
So, I don't know. I would just say that's the benefit of maybe fostering another partner or someone up on your level so that you guys can have this conversation and not have it at unequal levels.
Yep. Here's what I would say. I guess here's my conclusion.
So give someone a raise.
There you go. Easier said than done. Yeah. My conclusion would be if you ever come across a client and they start doing something illegal like that, I think you give them a warning and just say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. I do not align ethically, professionally, in any way of what you're doing. And I've seen this. Maybe you've just listened to this podcast and you've actually never had the experience before, but I still think you say this. You say, I've had this happen before. And it goes down a bad road. And I'm willing to work with you, but like I'll let this slide one time. But if I see any more things happen in this way, I think we're just going to have to cut ties and not do business together anymore.
And I think you
give them one chance only. I think that's where I screwed up, like 2 chances.
Well, I think it was more than 2 chances.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, maybe more than 2.
But you could use the rule of 3, right? So one you fool me once, shame on you, right? So you give them that one chance, then they screw you over again, then
fool me twice.
Yep. Shame on me.
Yep.
Right. But then you don't allow the third. So that is your one chance. But like that's the way to logically think about it. Okay. Shame on you, then shame on me. We're done.
Yep.
No more shame.
Yep.
You shame. Do you know what that's from?
No.
Game of Thrones?
Oh, I don't watch the Game of Thrones. I'm sorry.
Oh. No, actually, I think that was Annie making fun of Game of Thrones. So one lady's walking through this street and they're all yelling, shame, shame. Shame. So I'll say, shame on it. And she'll go, no, you shame.
Shame on me. So there you go. A little horror story for you, but I hope everybody can learn from it.
Okay, you want to jump into our guest?
Yes. So who is our guest today on the podcast?
So I went down to Denver and I met with Jerry Boland, basically our mentor. It's a longer, extended interview. Lance will either cut the tape and chime in if he feels like it, or we'll listen to the whole thing and then we'll get his response. I kind of sprinkled it in while I was there. Next week, we'll play Ron Falaiti, which is he's kind of famous down here in Denver. I think a lot of people probably know about him too. He was also very interesting. So let's get started with Jerry Boland. Okay, we're here with my mentor, Jerry Boland. Little background on the guy. I met him probably seven or 8 years ago now. It's been a while.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And the backstory that I don't even think Jerry knows. Well, how we met is somehow I knew an electrician. And I was unlicensed, and mainly we were doing residential stuff, which is totally fine unlicensed. Even some commercial stuff, technically you can do it. But I was new to town, and I said I need an architect on board to oversight and do all that. And she mentioned your name, so got a hold on you. Yeah. So somehow I got a hold of you, called you up, and I don't know. It's like we've been friends ever since. Never been a beat. But what always struck me was how open and giving you were. So every time I call you, you just answer a question. Anytime there's a project that we want you on, you're sure, I'll be on. What do you charge? I don't know. What do you think about this? Okay, put me down for that. It's very easy. So part of our philosophy at F9, because of Jerry, that Jerry doesn't know, is to always give. So the stuff that we put on Revit furniture, we have a whole bunch of free training. When we went to the school, we wanted to give. Even the stuff that we sell, we feel like we open up our firm. People have contacted me because of this podcast. Always free advice. So whatever we can do, and that's because of you, Jerry. So congratulations to you, and thanks for everything, and thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Don't mention my age. All right.
You're 42, aren't you? You look it.
Just over.
Yeah. So we're here, and this is a special segment. Lance couldn't make it, but it's basically your best and worst advice. So, Jerry, what would you say your best advice that you've either gotten or that you've given?
Architecturally speaking, or
do you have
life?
Do you have both?
I have. I have general life.
Let's start there. Can we start there?
Yeah. The best advice is, and you really reminded me, give. Just continue to give. No strings attached.
I think that's huge. I think that's huge too. We even tell some of our students who are designing, mainly they design a brick. You saw. I don't know. You came. So we teach at CU Boulder. Jerry came and guessed. Did you see many bridges, or did you see mainly houses? You must have saw a couple bridges.
I saw bridges 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But not this year.
So after you left, you were there for a couple hours, and I thought they were pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Some were incredible.
Yeah. So we were kind of, because sometimes we like to rig it. So we'll put the best ones first, like when you come or someone else comes, but we didn't rig it this year. And then after you left, Jerry, they just got better and better. And we're like, oh my God.
Shoot, I shouldn't have left.
Yeah. It was amazing. So some of them we tell, like one guy a couple years ago did a bridge for the University of Oregon, and he did their logo in there. It was very cool. And we're like, send this out, send this to them. And don't have any expectations. And we don't know if anything has ever came from any of these, but a couple of them we say, one guy did in Singapore. He did a bridge because basically their bridge is very low and it's damming up this area, and all the boats have to go around. And Singapore is a huge port. So at midpoint, I said, well, not only do the bridge because you're going to undam it, the ecosystem will be great and all that stuff, but figure out how many miles they have to go around this bridge, and then figure out how many ships need to go around this bridge. So he figured all that out. And then I said, okay. And at midterm, he presented that. Then I go, hey, gas is, let's just say $2 a gallon. And then we did some quick math. And over 5 years, basically they'd save all these ships, because it's something like 100 ships a day that have to go around this thing. They'd save $2 billion. I go, why don't you present to Singapore that, there's a penny per mile tax for these ships, but they're going to make this bridge, but then they'll go the shorter route and they'll save X amount of miles, which means X amount of gallons, and they'll actually double their money. Like if the math is there, the math is, it's there.
And they don't even have to build it. Just pay it.
They just have,
pennies for it.
Pay pennies for it, pennies per gallon. So, yeah, okay. I think you're right, just to give, and I think you've shown that. So,
awesome. Awesome.
How about professionally, architecturally?
Professionally, I have in the last, I want to say 10 to 15 years, I've brought on this mantra to myself. And that the advice is pretty simple. Maybe hard to do, but pretty simple. Every project needs to have a hallmark symbol. It has to have one special piece, and you can apply that. And I've tried to apply it to the most lowly projects and to the most grand projects. But every project has to have one big, memorable hallmark piece to it.
Can that, when you're thinking about that, when you're designing it, does that have to be the partie that runs throughout the project? Or could it be an isolated, something like maybe just the front entrance has a symbol that's unique? So my question is, does it have to be continuous through everything, or could it just be a literal symbol? Did you get what I'm trying to ask?
If the big thing happens to be right inside the front door, give somebody a hint, but don't give it all away. If it's on the outside, it's probably going to be the first thing you see at 50 miles an hour.
Yep.
So it could be either. I love to sprinkle a job with some iconic thing, but you can't overdo it. So my rule, because we don't always get the biggest budgets with jobs, is find the one thing. And when you find it, it'll probably give you a clue as, can you sprinkle it some more?
Yeah. Do you have an example for us?
I do. And I did. It's a building I did. It's one of the first buildings I did in Colorado Springs. And it was to target aerospace contractors.
Okay.
When the world went into turmoil, and all of a sudden we have Homeland Security, and these the Air Force bases were ramping up. So I put a metal wing on my building.
Nice.
And I put it highway side, and I let the rest of the building kind of be background to it. And it was a really tight budget.
Yep.
But I put that wing out there, and it's known for that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the one with the wing. Yeah.
You need to give me the address. I need to drive by there.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oops. I guess I should have turned off my phone.
It's right by the airport down in Colorado Springs.
Awesome.
And then, there were a couple more buildings on that development. The second one I did too, which used to be Blair College, and it has a smaller wing. So, but it's called Aerospace Plaza is the name of the development. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's one example.
I like it. Before we move on to worst advice, do you have any other that you want to wrap up, give out? I saw you writing notes. That's the only reason I'm asking.
I was writing down my worst advice.
Do you want to go into worst?
Yeah, and this goes for professional and personal life.
Okay.
Somebody asks you a question, you don't really know the answer, but you don't want to act dumb, so you make up something. Don't do that. If you don't know it, just say, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're in front of a client, go, I'm going to make a point of finding out what that is. But don't try to buffalo anybody. They'll see right through you.
You gave that to me 2 years ago, and now I just use, I'll get back to you. That's all you have to say. And then you look down at your iPad or whatever, and you think about it. I'll have to get back to you on that. That's it.
How'd you get Annie to marry you then?
She got back to me, and I just kept asking.
I thought you lied to her.
Too funny. That is great. I think that's huge too, especially for a lot of the younger people who might feel a little bit intimidated going out in the field or anything like that. You can always get back. You can always call someone up, call Jerry up. You say, I'll get back to you in the car. Call Jerry.
Yeah, you can always do that.
And his phone number is
BR 549.
Awesome, Jerry. Anything else before we part ways?
Well, I have a lot of advice. I'm not going to put it all on the air today, but you get as old as I am, I'm turning 66 in July. So
don't look a day over 65.
Thank you. Good. You saw me taking notes. I had too many notes, so I had too much advice actually. So
hit us with one more, Jerry. This is a short segment. It's under 3 minutes, but we're here down in Denver. I came down to visit you.
Okay, I have two more things.
Yep.
One can be related. I'm going to say it's architectural related because that's when I use it.
Yep.
When you're looking at a new project and you're looking at all the limitations you have, somewhere in that pile of manure is a great opportunity. Just keep looking for it. You're going to find it in all the limitations. My best projects have been the ones that had the most limits to it. And I'm working on one now, assisted living, and the site's too small.
Yep.
And we knocked it around a little bit, and now we have more site than we need, which is unbelievable.
Awesome.
So, and then the last thing is always do your best. And when you're doing your best.
That one's tough because people like to lie to themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you heard it here first from Jerry. Dig till you hit gold. Thanks a lot for being on. Thanks for being a good friend, my bud.
You bet.
All right.
My pleasure.
All right, Lance, we'll look forward to your response.
Big thanks to our good friend Jerry and mentor for being on the podcast. Appreciate that, Jerry. I hope you listen to this, and then maybe we can get you in again, and maybe we can do a more extended interview, because I feel like Jerry, and we've always known that he's this gold mine of knowledge, right?
Yep.
Whenever we need any kind of advice, even if it's personal stuff, I feel like he's a perfect person to go to.
Yeah, he was great to meet.
So what's hilarious, though, is I knew coming in and listening to that, Jerry wasn't going to have any worse advice, because Jerry, I believe, is an eternal optimist, 100%.
I know. So
which is fine.
When we were listening, he said, I have worse advice. And then you asked me, what was his worst advice? And I was like, I think it was that. What was the one? This one?
Don't make up answers. So I'm gonna give you my reaction. I think this is why Jerry and F and I worked so well together. Is we have similar business models in that we're small and nimble, but then we also we never really get these huge, $400 a square foot house, just unlimited budget, multi-millionaire from who knows where, right?
Until now.
Until somebody listens. So what I loved about what Jerry said, and I thought it was twofold, was every project can have its hallmark, and that there's always opportunity. I feel like those two go hand in hand. And we've talked about this before on the podcast, is that we do just spec houses for builders. But even when it comes down to that spec house, I know the only thing that I'm going to really be able to make a hallmark of it is, and I have no other word to use other than a timeless floor plan, in the sense that I really don't think they're going to have to knock down any walls in 10 years. I feel as if we've created a space that is timeless in that sense, that it's just a solid, well thought out, efficient floor plan.
On the most recent spec homes I've been doing, I had 2 ideas. One got knocked down, one stayed. So the one that got knocked down was we were going to do a cupola over the stairs, and it was going to be awesome, but it was a little over the top and it got nixed. But so we're going to redo that portion. But the other one that did stay is there's this really cool entrance feature that it's almost like a tower entrance. And they said, yeah, let's do it. So this was before Jerry, but I think we're trying to implement that one cool thing.
Yeah. The other thing about doing hallmark work, or one really cool thing on a project, is I think it ties, doing something like that on a project ties everything back to memory. So if you're a business owner, say that you were thinking about making a new office space downtown or something like that, or let's say you're a doctor and you have a doctor's office, right? I bet wouldn't it make sense that you spend maybe the hallmark of your project is the reception space, right? And it probably already is anyway. That's where maybe the most money is spent anyway. But to hire an architect who gets that from the beginning, I think would be paramount for you, right? Because like at the end of the day, that's the first impression people have of you. So the memory is going to stick of what that looks like, what it feels like, and might get more clients coming back to you just because of that, right?
I've even noticed, because I've been looking at apartments, they've redone their sales place. And even ones, their sales place sometimes extremely outshines their apartments. So I just want to reiterate that point.
The other thing that Jerry mentioned was don't make up any answers. And this was critical for me because I think right away when I first started in internships and we'd be in meetings with clients and they would, maybe my former bosses weren't there, I would make up an answer. I would pretend that I knew everything, which is a giant mistake in hindsight. But to make an excuse for myself, I feel like I didn't learn that lesson until I finally convinced myself that I don't know everything and that it's okay, and that I witnessed other people above me saying, "Oh, I don't know. We'll have to look into that." You would think, and I think a lot of people do that, where they try to make up an answer right away, no matter what kind of discipline or what kind of thing you're doing, is because maybe you have it in your head that you're supposed to know everything about what you're doing. But in the end, I don't think clients even expect it. No. I think they're fine with you. I think they get even more confident when you say, "I don't know, I will look into it and I'll get back to you. No problem."
Exactly. So the point I'd make, besides Jerry just told me that a couple of years ago and I used it ever since, but I think it's also extremely valid because I don't have time to waste. So if I tell them a lie, either they're going to figure out and it'll look bad on me, or else I know that it's a lie. So I'm going to have to go back, research it, and then like tell them again, and then kind of extra explain, like how I got to that answer and what, I don't have time. Like, no, I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'll tell you later.
And the last one is kind of a layup. Always do your best. I think I think a lot of professionals that are successful try to always do their best. I think it's hard because we get lazy and sometimes we just want to take a day off. So when that happens to me, what I've been doing lately is I take the day off and I don't try to push through it anymore. And I'm just trying to get a better sense of myself and where I'm like, nope, it's time to relax. And honestly, my fiance had to tell me that this week. She's like, you need to just stop thinking we have to get this yard done. We have to do all these things. Can we get back to just a regular sense of everything? And ever since then, my back has felt better. I feel like I'm retaining more information studying. So
yeah, that's great advice. And then also too, I think some people just need a wake up call because I was stuck in the National Guard for a couple years where I just coasted because I wasn't doing all my best. And I wish someone would have shook me and said, "Hey, you're only going to do this once and you have to spend the time here anyways. So you might as well kick some A and do some cool stuff." So if that's you and you need that wake up call, time isn't coming back, buddy. So go for it now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So thanks again, Jerry. Looking forward to next week when we have Ron on, one of his working partners that he works with. Also, semi-famous architect like Alex mentioned. So last thing is Alex has some interesting development talk for us in regards to Alex being possibly a real estate agent.
Yeah.
And not licensed or anything like that, but sort of a buy-owner type of situation.
Yeah. So the market's hot right now. So we might list our development by owner. But that's still, we haven't even built the thing. So that's a long ways away. So right now I'm selling my house, and this is why it ties into the development talk. And then I'm in an apartment right now, and then I'm going to take my time and find a new house.
But let's set this up a little bit better, okay? So traditionally, right, when people go to sell their homes, they think you absolutely legally have to have an agent, right? A lot of people think that, but that's false, as we've come to find out.
Yep. So if you already know that that's false, you don't need an agent. But then you think, oh, I can't find the forms, or like how I have to go to a lawyer,
or how would I even price the thing out?
Yep.
There's sort of pros and cons, right? If you hire a professional who's doing this day in and day out, they'll be able to, if they do a good job, they'll be able to say, here's what you should price your house at, not too high, not too low. Here's the typical process. You're not going to have to deal with the client, right?
Yep.
But then at the end of the day, well, you don't make as much money.
Yeah, because they take that fee.
Exactly.
Let's say
so
3%
everything's
free.
a double-edged sword here.
Absolutely. So I thought, hey, I can try this out. And then I literally just Googled Colorado real estate forms. And in Colorado, it might be different from your state, but in Colorado, you have to use approved forms by the state. And then instead of just, listing what are approved, they just made up the forms and they put them online. So probably this week, I'm going to read through those forms. So there's not only the contract
in detail, so you know what the heck you're doing. I mean, it's sort of going to be like a little educational journey for Al.
Yep. So I'm going to read through those forms and then read through. So not only is there just your contract form, there's disclosure form, there's a whole bunch. Some of them won't be pertinent, some will be. So I'm just going to go through the whole list, read through them all, see what I can do, right? Then I asked 2 real estate agents. Well, kind of asked. One I asked up in Minnesota because I didn't want a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. And they basically said, yeah, that's fine. You can do it. Really just reassured me. Mm-hmm. And then your wife called me, who was a real estate agent. And she said, and her only key thing was she goes, well, the market's hot right now. And I basically, if it wasn't hot, it might be a little bit more scary. Right. So my house is going to sell. It's one of the lower price houses. People want to eat it up in that area.
It will literally be, and this isn't a dig on Al. It's actually a pro because, everybody's complaining about real estate prices being too high. Is Alex's house will be the lowest priced house available on the market, but that means it will go the fastest.
I also think my house is overpriced.
Exactly. So it's a win-win-win.
And then here's the other thing too, is that I can try. And let's say no one shows up, no one, whatever. And now I'm going to show up. Lance will show up. That doesn't mean that I can't then hire a real estate agent.
Yeah.
And then try again.
Yeah.
If you don't get the price that you want and all that other stuff. So the other thing is that a lot of people find your house online. So before, you probably need a real estate agent to send you houses, to know where they are. You don't have access to MLS.
Yeah. So let's talk about MLS for 1 second. For anybody listening who has or hasn't bought a house, right? We've all heard about this MLS. It's called Multiple Listing Services, okay?
Yep.
And honestly, up until I think last week, Alex and I were under the assumption, at least I was, that the only way you get access to the MLS, it's sort of this, we thought it was this protectionist system, is you have to hire a realtor.
Yep.
But that's not the case, apparently.
Well, you can go online. There's online services. They probably are realtors that will put it up for a fee.
Okay.
$200, $500, all that stuff. And it's so funny. They call it the MLS.
The MLS.
Yeah. But what's also, if we couldn't get on the MLS, I don't even know if that would deter me too. Because I get, Maryland sends me houses from MLS, all that. I still do all my Zillow search. There's all these other websites like, that's where I look. They're better formatted. They have better pictures. They give you all the information that you need. I almost guarantee a lot of people are looking through that. So it's almost getting rid of this barrier. There's no way, if you want to, that, because you can, here's the other key too. You can post on Zillow. So if you couldn't post on Zillow and you couldn't get on MLS, then it's like, man, you need a real
Well, yeah,
estate agent.
because on Zillow you can do for sale by owner. They have a whole section that's just for that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think Redfin does too.
Yep.
Okay.
So you got to be able to get your house in front of people. And then for me, it's safer because it's a hot market to sell. So I'm going to try it out, give you guys any feedback that I have, and let you know how the process went.
Yeah. So to wrap it all up, what as far as the development talk goes this week, what's interesting to us about that is we've harked on this over and over again. The idea behind this development project is the more hats you wear, the more money you make. So at the end of the day, if it ends up being this not this crazy process that we are still, we're very, like Alex is just putting his toes in the water just a little bit and testing it out, right? And if it ends up that the water's too cold or too hot, well then obviously we're going to default back and go to a realtor and make it happen that way, just because again fish out of water. But if it is another possible hat we can wear, well then once again we're being the architect, we're being the developer, we're being the contractor, and possibly being the realtor. You get paid 4 times in that way.
Yep. And then here's another argument I could see about not doing it. And we might find out not to do it. And
Exactly.
I'm totally fine with that. It's like, oh, you could have sold your house for $5,000 more if you would have had a real estate agent. Yeah, but your fee alone was $14,000. So I still would have saved $10,000.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So we'll see you next episode. Have a good one.
Bye.